Honestly, The Odyssey is one of Christopher Nolan's greatest achievements. But it never becomes one of his greatest films because his writing can't match his evolving filmmaking. I walked out of the movie completely conflicted on how I felt about this because the individual pieces of this film that I really, really love are great, are all-time great. But they never equal up to like a masterpiece of a film. And I think I know why, and I'm about to explain. The scale, the scope, the tension captured on screen makes this mythology feel like history rather than fantasy. The way he stages every set, how the way he blocks his actor creates incredible momentum that kept me locked in from beginning to end. He takes his time building suspense, making every encounter feel dangerous. Thanks to the heavy use of practical filmmaking, everything feels tangible, whether it's a towering cyclops or a ship being battered by the sea. I never questioned what I was seeing. Some of the action set pieces are the best moments of the film. So the ones that was the most awe-inspiring to see on the big screen. The towering Cyclops was equally as awe-inspiring as it was terrifying. The movie immediately switched genres from this kind of realistic fantasy Greek mythology story to a straight-up horror movie. And there's several moments of dread throughout this film and made me really think about the comments he made while him wanting to make a horror film. I'm like, well, you show that you have the chops to do it in this movie. And the absolute best and most thrilling sequence is the Trojan horse sequence. Something that's been, told through millennium time and history and how we've known about it. But the way Nolan captured it was out of this world. I think that the way it started to the way it ended, I just was so locked into the whole moment, and I thought it was so inventive, and I still can't figure out how they did it. He also pulls out fantastic performances from nearly everyone in the cast. Even Travis Scott, who I was immediately skeptical about, but he never felt distracted. He's even part of one of the best sequences in the movie. But the thing is, each of these sequences was so awe-inspiring and great, but it didn't move me emotionally in a way that I think it was intended to. And that's the weird thing about The Odyssey. A lot of it feels big in scope and greatness and masterfully made, but the emotional attachment to the characters are what the problem was I had in a lot of scenes. And this is where the conflicting part comes in. One issue I've had with Nolan films over the years is the emotional connection to his characters. Many of them speak with the same emotional reserve. They're often restrained, serious, and more interested in communicating ideas than revealing who they are as people. Nolan has always been fascinated in every single film that he does with time, memory, non-linear story structure, and fracturing the narrative in a way where it builds on reveals. And I gotta say, a lot of the time, those choices have led to some most incredible reveals in movies. Here, though, I couldn't help wondering if the story could have been even more powerful if it was told chronologically. There's multiple sections in this movie where I just wanted the movie to slow down and let me live inside these moments. Instead of often it felt eager to deliver exposition and rush toward the next incredible set piece. Christopher Nolan obviously has become a better filmmaker as each movie has progressed, but I don't think he has done a great job with being a better dramatist, creating the dramatic drama that gets you reeled in and feel like that emotional pill in each movie. And I think even the better way to say it, I think that his directing game has gotten really, really good, has become on top of the line, one of the greatest of all time, but his pen hasn't caught up. And that writing also affects one of the biggest and best assembled casts that we'll have this year. There are around 15 recognizable actors here, and probably even more hidden underneath all the helmets and dust. Despite the massive ensemble, everyone completely commits, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Whether they're storming beaches, fighting mystical creatures, or simply reacting to the impossible, every performance feels believable because Nolan insists on making everything feel real. And I think that's what makes this really, really frustrating. The actors elevate the characters. It's not great characters being elevated by great actors. Harsh Patel is excellent as Odia's second in command, becoming one of the few companions I generally connected with because he continually questioned his decisions. John Leguizamo gives what might honestly be one of his best performances of his career and steals every single scene he's in. Elliot Page brings so much vulnerability to sign on, and Robert Pattinson once again steals scenes as the manipulative Antinous. They're all memorable, but by the end, I asked myself, which one of these characters changes? Which one of these characters had autonomy? Which one of these characters had something that was interesting about them that was outside of waiting for Odysseus? Outside of a handful of exceptions, very, very small handful, these characters do not receive enough depth to become fully realized characters. A lot of them are very one note and lack a lot of attention to detail. Most of them are defined by one simple characteristic. You could sum them up in one sentence, and they kind of fade in the background, especially someone like Mia Goth, who I think is one of my favorite actresses right now. Her role is literally just the peasant who snitches. And that's it. Excellent performances attached to very thin characters. Luckily, Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, is the exception. Matt Damon is easily the best written character in the movie because the screenplay actually spends time with him. He becomes the only fully realized character with a meaningful arc. That's also where the biggest thematic elements that I really loved and attached to and really held onto come alive with his character. Nolan has always been fascinated by legendary figures who shape history while struggling to balance greatness with family. Odysseus fits perfectly into that obsession. For nearly the first hour, everyone talks about Odysseus, his honor, his kindness, his brilliance, his victory with the Trojan horse, which was really brilliant, and the legend grows before we spend time with the man himself at all. But once we finally do, we see a man that's driven by as much as pride and ego as courage. His intelligence wins wars, but his hubris destroys lives. His obsession with trying to get home and end this war as fast as possible is what ends an entire civilization and a way of life. History is trying to remember him as a hero, but throughout the movie, Odysseus is questioning if that is true. And I really love that conflict that he had throughout the movie. One consistent critique I've had of Christopher Nolan throughout his career, even though he's one of my favorite directors of all time, he's made some of my favorite movies, I think he does a piss poor job at writing women characters. And I'm not going to say that it's on the actors at all. All the female actors are doing excellent work here. They're rising above their thinly written characters, but is even more thin than what's happened to the men because of the way they're utilized. Anne Hathaway brings warmth and emotional complexity to Penelope. It's one of her best performances she's ever given, one of the best performances of the year, but her character rarely extends beyond faithfully waiting for her husband. Lupita Nyong'o casting as Helena of Troy generated a ton of controversy for all the wrong reasons. All the bigots came out to attack her casting in here, which is insane because she's one of the most beautiful actresses on the planet and one of the best actresses on the planet, but yet she's barely in the movie long enough to leave a lasting impression. And Zendaya has tremendous screen presence as Athena and participated in one of the film's strongest emotional scenes, but she was really underutilized and underused for what she meant to the story and what she meant for the main character. But the biggest disappointment I have that was used here is Calypso's character, who was played by Charlize Theron, who's almost non-existent in this movie. Calypso's relationship with Odysseus should carry enormous emotional weight, but because the screenplay rushes through her story, never explains her backstory at all, why she is on this island by herself and can't leave, she feels more like a narrative device than a fully formed person. There's only one exception among the female characters that I feel was really a standout and had their own autonomy, and that's Sarah Morton's Cersei. She has agency, she has personality, she commands the screen and gets actually to have some flair in her character that felt like she was alive. And she's also involved in one of my favorite sequences in the movie, one that's totally horrifying. What really kept standing out to me is that 99% of the women in this film were either there to reveal something about Odysseus or something real about another male character, never really about themselves. And because Matt Damon's character, rightfully so, gets most of the character work because he's the main character of the story, I feel like everyone is just kind of orbiting around him and doesn't really get to do much else. The practical work in this film, though, is unbelievable. His obsession with using practical sets and figuring out to create a lot of these monsters in a practical way has made this movie feel so immersive. The Cyclops feels completely real. The giants that they storm against on the beach are genuinely intimidating and scary. I still don't understand how he pulled that off. The storms feel dangerous enough that I occasionally worried more about the actors' well-being than the characters. Everything feels absolutely tangible. That's always been one of Nolan's greatest takes. He takes the unbelievable and makes it feel realistic enough that it feels like it's happening on screen and it was actually there. Obviously, CGI was used to enhance things, but his use of creating real sets, really creating a Cyclops in different ways, I think really enhanced how you feel watching this movie on the biggest screen possible. But here's probably my hottest take about this film. The big thing about this movie was the fact that Christopher Nolan shot the whole film on IMAX. And while that's very impressive, I think that was probably the biggest mistake in terms of how the scope and scale of the film felt. Because the IMAX cameras, because the way they're built and how big they are, they make the cinematographer have to stay really in close on the actors and every set piece. For the very intimate scenes, this works beautifully and gets you really in there. You feel like a fly on a wall when characters are having conversations. But when your story involves dangerous oceans, massive armies, towering monsters, and one of the greatest adventures ever put on paper, I sometimes just wanted to take a step back and appreciate the scale, the scope, and the geography to see how things felt towering over you, but everything had to be so claustrophobic and uptight. And I want to say, I saw this in a Regal Premium experience. It was a really big screen, but it's not an IMAX screen, so that may have affected how I feel about the scale of the film. But not everybody can get into IMAX. Not everybody should be able to pay for IMAX. So regular moviegoers should still be able to appreciate the scale of the film without, paying top premium dollar. The spectacle, the scale is all still really great. But the irony here is that Christopher Nolan's most ambitious and maybe biggest movie ever feels kind of small because of it. This is why I'm conflicted, because every department is entering into like a high level, masterful work here at the highest level you can think of. The director, the cinematographer, the sound design, the score, the set piece and the production design, they're all Oscar worthy. And the performances are all great. I think that there's not one person that feels super Oscar worthy that jumps out like they have to get nominated. But if this is a weaker year where the rest of the films in the year don't really deliver, I could definitely see multiple people in here getting nominated for acting awards. And I want to make something really clear. I have a lot of criticism and caveats to every positive I have, but that the only reason that's happening is because Christopher Nolan is a masterful filmmaker who's made masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And I went in expecting another masterpiece and I was let down a little bit. And I think that's where all the disappointment and criticism is coming from, because while there's so many great pieces to the film, I felt like they could have been even greater. Because movies aren't judged by each individual department, not by like regular moviegoers or even by critics. It's about the singular experience, how the movie moved you and made you feel. And while certain parts of the movie made me feel excitement, horror, and sadness, the overall experience, I felt very, very let down by it, even though I still think it's a great movie. The sum never is greater than its parts. Ironically, it's actually the opposite. There's individual scenes in this movie, especially in the third act, because the third act is the best part of the film, honestly, that I'm going to remember for years. I just wish those incredible sequences equal to like a wholly unforgettable movie from beginning to end. But this movie is definitely going to work for you if you're a Christopher Nolan fan, if you like this style of filmmaking that he always puts out, if you are a fan of someone taking something that's been done over and over and over and putting their own vision towards it, because Christopher Nolan is a visionary and he takes any story and applies how he feels personally and makes every main character basically his journey throughout life. Or are you just simply looking for a theatrical experience that's going to take your breath away? Go see this on the biggest screen possible. Try to see it in IMAX if you can get a ticket, because everything is selling out. I think that movie is worth seeing on the big screen just because of the visuals. Because Christopher Nolan still remains one of the greatest filmmakers in the movie industry today, or maybe of all time. And Odyssey does prove that. What he does on camera, the vision that he has, the scope that he captures, all the practicality is A1 here. It also reminded me that great filmmaking is not only about creating great moments. It's about connecting those moments to an unforgettable emotional journey. And while I admired this movie for every single moment I was watching, I was never bored. Not once. I just wish those incredible moments added up to something that left me with the same kind of awe by the end. So with that said, I'm going to give Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey a 4 out of 5. Let me know down below what you feel about The Odyssey. How, do you feel like it's a masterpiece? Did it let you down a little bit? Did you completely hate it? I want to hear all your comments down below and your thoughts about every individual part. And I'll see you next time.